Thousands of people, including top military commanders and judges, are being detained in Turkey, accused of attempting to overthrow the government. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C., and this is The Heat. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan vows those behind an attempted coup will pay a heavy price. Thousands of people, including senior commanders in the Turkish armed forces, are now in custody in response to Friday's uprising. The Turkish Foreign Ministry said at least 290 people were killed. President Erdogan blames cleric Fethullah Gulen for plotting the coup and is calling on the United States to extradite the 75-year-old who's been in self-imposed exile in the U.S. state of Pennsylvania. We begin our coverage right now with CCTV's Stephanie Fried in Istanbul. And Stephanie, what can you tell us about the people who've been detained by the government and the legal process in Turkey?
Well, first of all, and I'll tell you what's happening right behind me, which is thousands upon thousands of people here, Central Square, Taksim of Istanbul, turning out again another night. They've been turning out for a number of nights consecutively by the thousands to show their support for the government. These are pro-President Erdogan supporters, and they spend every night since that overthrown coup attempt, every night, almost all night long here at the square. Let me go back to your question, which is the people who have been arrested. These are sweeping arrests, thousands and thousands of people arrested. The number is climbing up toward 10,000, and those include, as you said, senior military personnel, senior commanders, including a security advisor to the president himself, the commander of the Air Force Base, where the U.S.-led coalition strikes against ISIL take off from, judges, police officers, and today, employees of the finance ministry. So these are sweeping arrests. They are drawing some criticism. And again, top ranking people in these arrests. Some have hinted that perhaps there was a list of people to be arrested that was drawn up a long time ago by the Turkish government that preceded any attempted coup by a very long time. Anand?
Stephanie, Turkey is a member of NATO. It's a critical player in the battle against ISIL. How effective is it now going to be with this coup, and is Turkey's military now fractured?
Well, to start with your last question first, the military is absolutely fractured, with so many members of the military being arrested, people being killed, so much suspicion, and suspicion on both sides who was involved in the coup, who really was behind it. Definitely the military is fractured at this point right now. In terms of ISIL and the fight against ISIL, it's important to remember that Turkey essentially has served in a big way as a jumping off point for those U.S.-led coalition strikes against ISIL. This is from Incirlik. This is an Air Force base, and sorties led by the U.S. Coalition run from Incirlik to carry out strikes in Syria and Iraq against ISIL. Now, those strikes stopped for several days, and France's foreign minister even called into question whether Turkey would still be a viable partner in the fight against ISIL. However, the strikes have resumed, and that statement was semi-retracted. So going forward, there's a big open question mark about really what Turkey's role will be in terms of the fight against ISIL. But certainly, again, the army right now in Turkey is fractured. Anand.
Thanks, Stephanie. That's CCTV's Stephanie Fried reporting from Istanbul. Well, joining us now from Istanbul is Hakan Jamuz. He's a Turkish political commentator and director at Stoke and White law firm in London. Here with us in the studio is Aykan Özdemir. He's a former member of the Turkish Parliament and a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington. From Ankara, we're joined by Tülin Delulu. She's a journalist who's written extensively for various Turkish and American publications. Also with us in Washington, D.C. is İlhan Tanir. He's a reporter with Cumhuriyet Daily and a Turkish analyst. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Hakan Jamuz, let me start with you. What do you believe motivated this coup? Why did sections of the Turkish military decide to overthrow the government?
Well, there's various stories that's been talked about at the moment, but one clear kind of tangible evidence we have is police have already drafted a list of people they were going to arrest, and that list have included most of the members of the military units that tried and attempted to do coup d'etat. So that could be one tangible reason we could probably discuss as an evidence-based reason. But there are other reasons that we could talk about, as saying they have been preparing for some time. These people do belong to Fethullah Gülen movement, terrorist movement, and that these people have been preparing because they had this intention to do so for some time. And we can see evidence of this from some of the books and a list of things that have come up from the tanks and the vehicles they were using. So there has been an intention. Maybe they've kind of brought it forward because they knew police was going to move on them quite recently.
Well, that's an interesting theory. I haven't seen that one before, the fact that the government had a pre-prepared list, and that list could have precipitated this coup. Do you believe that to be the case, Hakan?
I think it's possible that for two reasons. One, there was a list of officers who were going to be investigated and possibly put to trial. Moreover, there were rumors that a significant number of military officers were going to be forced into early retirement later in August. So both of these factors could have come together to push these officers to stage a coup. Maybe they were planning for a later date, so they might have been pushed into a premature coup attempt, and that might have also led to the failure of the coup.
Right, let's bring in Tulen from Ankara. Tulen, the military in Turkey have staged coups before. There have been something like, what, 4 coups or 5 coups in the last 60 years. Why did this one fall apart?
Well, that's a good question. I think everyone in Ankara is asking about it because there are so many, things that makes people doubt about, how did it happen? How did it fail? Because this country, as you said, had seen 3 successful coups in the last 3 decades. So this country is definitely not a stranger to the military coups. But first things first, this coup was not carried in the military command chain. And everyone that I'm talking to, like, a number of retired military intelligence officers do also tell me that the ones who, have carried out the coup are the Gülenists. So there is no doubt that the Gülenists had carried this coup. But again, when you go to the details of it as to how did it happen and how could this, be so devastating, and how could they dare to bomb the Turkish parliament and also, shut fires at the Bosphorus, that was really, unthinkable. But we also had seen in the sledgehammer case, Anand, during the time when the Gülenists and the Erdogan camp was in a convenient marriage, they put behind bars hundreds and hundreds of retired and active duty military personnel, accusing them of forming a terror organization and also overthrowing the Turkish government, the Erdogan government. And they claimed that they were going to bomb 2 mosques in Istanbul and also the Atatürk Mausoleum in Ankara. Well, that coup, after the corruption case came into being, and that was December 2013, right, the Erdogan camp and the Gülenist camp fell apart, and since then this Ergenekon case dropped. All the military personnel were acquitted. Well, that coup didn't happen, but on Friday night, July 15, the Gülenists had actually bombed the Turkish parliament, and they bombed Istanbul, Istanbul's Bosphorus. So there are a lot of things that's just resembling and disturbing here.
Right, Ilhan Tanir, President Erdogan had been coming under increasing criticism for the manner in which he was running Turkey. He was being accused of cracking down on the media, cracking down on the political opposition, trying to consolidate more power in the presidency. Now we've had this coup, the coup has failed. Is it likely now that the president is going to widen that crackdown?
I would say agree with you, but I think that the initial signals President Erdogan is going to double down and he's going to go after a wide range of opposition. I hope I'll be proved wrong. But so far, one thing that it is very noticeable, President Erdogan has not been trying to reach out to the other side of the country. Yes, there are thousands of people are going out, stay in the street and support the government. But it has been 3 days. We have not seen from the government circles. For example, HDP, pro-Kurdish party leader, from very early hours of the coup, came out and condemned the coup. But President Erdogan has not called him to say thank you, or he has not tried to reach out to him. So these initial signals so far, I think it is about 15,000 people, or more than 15,000 people of the detained from the police forces and military forces, judiciary, bureaucracy. And these are, many people are asking, rightly so, how it is possible within a couple of days you can draw 15,000 people and then detain them or fire them. It is still early, and we are hoping that Mr. Erdogan is going to take a U-turn and trying to reach out to the other side of the party and stop cracking down on legitimate opposition within the country.
Hakan Jamuz, when we hear these figures of the number of people being detained, 10,000, 15,000, a sweeping number of people, can the president sustain this, or is it going to get to a point where he's going to antagonize even those in the military that support him right now, that his position could be dangerous?
First of all, those numbers are not correct. And I stand to correct the member of the panel here. The official numbers and all the TV channels broadcast are very similar numbers of around 6,000. That's all. And the other point I would like to correct about what my colleague said is President called the leaders of the opposition parties, thanking them for their effort in cracking down this coup attempt. And this is unprecedented. They've actually had quite lengthy discussions. And may I also add to you, just to prove a point what he said is wrong, the squares in Istanbul and other cities in Turkey are filled with people with Turkish flags, no party flags. This is not AK Party people, this is people of Turkey. It's a democracy in its full functioning, people stopping coup d'etat together. So I'd like to give credit to the people of Turkey for defending what is rightly theirs, i.e. their will being exercised by their own government, which was chosen by them through a fair and open, transparent election. Therefore, previous colleague, the way he portrayed it isn't really not necessarily the full picture of how we are in Turkey here. And those numbers are not necessarily correct. Though I will say this to you. This is one time where I can see most of the political spectrum people getting together to stand together on the same point. And I do hope we can actually make something out of this and have that social peace amongst each other. And I do hope that we will actually achieve that harmony and unity on standing on main principle values that hold this country together.
Okay, Ilan, do you want to respond to that very quickly, that these demonstrations that we are seeing are not party-affiliated demonstrations, they're actually people with Turkish flags there, and the other point that the number of people arrested is actually far lower?
These numbers are reported by New York Times, Washington Post, and Turkish the press. And the second point is all those meetings in Ankara and Istanbul, they are chants for President Erdogan, not for the wider spectrum of the values. One thing, for example, President Erdogan has not called Demirtas, Mr. Demirtas, who very first hours of the coup came out and opposed the coup and condemned the coup. So I disagree, respectfully disagree that I think Mr. Erdogan could have done better, but it is still early and he still can reach out, and a secular side of the country, Kurds, liberals, all the other parts of the country, he can do that. It's still early.
Right. Okay, let's talk about the cleric who is exiled here in the United States, Fethullah Gulen. President Erdogan says he led this coup. He's to blame for this. Let's listen to part of what the president said. Let's watch this.
Bu darbe girişiminden sonra After this coup attempt, once again I call on U.S. President Barack Obama. I say, give this person in Pennsylvania to Turkey already. I call on the United States, if we are strategic partners, if we are model partners, please comply with your partner's requests because we've given you every terrorist you've wanted from us.
What do you make of what the president is saying there, that Fethullah Gulen has led this coup, has been, or at least the people who staged the coup have been inspired by him? What do we make of that?
Right from the early hours of the failed coup attempt, both the Prime Minister Yildirim and President Erdogan were sure that this was a coup planned and executed by Fethullah Gulen and his followers. Now, the numbers of detained soldiers, roughly 6,000, and many generals, around 100 generals and colonels, indicate that this was a wider network. For example, it's clear that some of the officers belong to the rigid secular nationalist officers who are known for their anti-Erdogan sentiment. It's also possible that there were other officers who were simply in this for personal advancement, out of career concerns. So I think it would be more accurate to call this a hybrid coup, meaning this was a coup that brought different factions within the military, and for various, of course, they had a single communique on state TV. They argued that they were doing this to fight authoritarianism in Turkey. They argued that they were there to restore rule of law. Now, it was ironic, of course. They were trying to undo authoritarianism by violent authoritarianism. They were trying to reinstate rule of law by destroying and undermining rule of law. So I think it would be more accurate. Actually, it would be also better for the president and the prime minister to spell out the full scope, the full involvement of factions in this coup attempt, because only then Turkey can truly point to the structural problems in the Turkish military that has led to coups in 1960, 71, 1980, 1997, and so on and so forth. What I try to say is, unless Turkey moves beyond just the daily rhetoric and focuses on structural shortcomings of the Turkish military's culture that produces coups again and again, we might be in for other unfortunate failed attempts.
Tulin, what is your view on this? Is it a coalition here, elements of various groups that inspired this coup rather than just one single person here in the United States?
Oh, that's difficult to know. We just, really have to wait and see how this came into being rather than speculating about it. But it is for certain that President Erdogan is blaming the Fethullah Gülen movement to carry out this coup from the very first moment onwards. And, it's all about, he just carried a speech in Istanbul and he said that he's going to do all he can to uproot them, the Gülenists, from their caves. So he's really very angry about the Gülen movement, and he wants to cleanse all at once all the Gülenists from the state institutions. The problem with that approach is that the numbers are really actually very high. Today, Binali Yildirim spoke after the Council of Ministers meeting, and according to the Prime Minister, about 7,500 military personnel were taken into custody and 316 of them were arrested. 2,756 judges and prosecutors are suspended. Almost 1,500 governors and policemen are also suspended from their duty. That brings up about 12,000 state employees now are not able to do their jobs. Now, whether they're Gülenists or not, it's a different kind of an issue, but we had seen a similar issue in Iraq after the occupation. We had seen that the de-Baathification, cleansing all the state institutions from the Baath party members and mainly the Sunnis, had created a real problem for the Iraqi state. And if there is an Iraqi state today, you know, it's anyone's, guess. I think that's not. The point is, yes, you may try to, or you may wish to cleanse all the state institutions from the Gülenists, but you need to do it step by step. But if you do it all at once, okay, you're cleaning these state institutions from these people, but who are you bringing in? Who is doing the job? And therefore, you know, there is a real vulnerability here in Turkey that is creating some concern. This country is bordering both Iraq and Syria, and there is a serious fight against the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant, as well as the PKK, the separatist Kurdish terror organization within inside the country. And so, you know, this is really becoming a huge concern for the citizens as to where we are going next. Maybe the military coup failed, but it seems that, or maybe we can question whether there is a civilian coup now underway,
right,
and what the cost of it is going to be in the coming days. And so,
you know, and as Tulin tells us, you know, this is not just a crackdown on the military. I mean, there are huge numbers of people in civil society who've now been detained, judges, prosecutors, police, as she mentioned as well. Does this tell us that we have a president here and a government that has very, very little tolerance for dissent?
This is how it looks like. I mean, Tulin Daloğlu, I think, explained it very well. I do understand, many people are understanding the issue here is a coup. It is, you cannot have another more important issue than that. But the President Erdogan and the government so far seem moving very hastily and without much of attention to the country and how the institutions are going to be affected by that. And Tulin did not mention, but also there is a wide range of concern among the media, critical voices. There are many friends in Turkey right now. They are just doing their job. They are making their living by writing stories for their all their lives, and now they are very much concerned whether they are going to be arrested tomorrow. There are now lists are being published, numbers, dozens of journalists are being published that they are going to be arrested, and these are the accounts on social media and other accounts have been proved in the past that whatever they publish. So. Yes, I mean, it looks like the President Erdogan is going very fast and without in a couple of days, and these very hastily moving, making a lot of question and make many people are afraid of what's going to happen the next day.
Yeah, well, as you know, as you say, he is going very fast, and that has caught the attention of people around the world. The world has been looking at the events in Turkey with great concern. The United States Secretary of State John Kerry has expressed his concerns over what is happening in Turkey. Let's take a listen to part of what he had to say.
We also firmly urge the government of Turkey to maintain calm and stability throughout the country. And we also urge the government of Turkey to uphold the highest standards of respect for the nation's democratic institutions and the rule of law. And we will certainly support bringing the perpetrators of the coup to justice, but we also caution against a reach that goes well beyond that, and stress the importance of the democratic rule being upheld.
So, Hakan Cumhurbaşkanı, as we listen to Secretary of State Kerry there is concern that President Erdogan might be taking this too far.
Okay, I'm flabbergasted by the obsession the panel members have with President Erdogan and what he does, rather than talking about how these people slaughtered innocent civilians on the streets from helicopters and F-16s, shooting them, blatantly murdering them, bombing them on the streets of Turkey, in Ankara, Istanbul. Come on, stop talking about Erdogan. This is nothing to do with him. This is something to do with the country. We are being trying to taken over by a bunch of guys in uniforms using the military tools they had in their possessions to try and take over a democratic-led government and a country here. They've slaughtered innocent people. Let's talk about that. I mean, all these people talking about journalists, they've killed journalists, shot them down, innocent people on the streets of Istanbul. From Yeni Şafak newspaper, I don't see them mentioning their names. I don't see them talking about innocent women and men who were killed on the streets of Istanbul only 2 days ago, and yet we're talking about President Erdogan here. Come on. I mean, you're talking about John Kerry. John Kerry is the one who supports someone like Sisi in Egypt. When the coup was happening, the only announcement came from John Kerry was, we would like to see normalization and stability return to Turkey. What does that mean? How diplomatic can you get as a foreign Secretary of State of America? Instead of saying, we condemn coup culprits of this coup attempt. We condemn undemocratic ways of these people trying to take over a country. And we support government of Turkey. He didn't say that. Russia didn't say that. Britain didn't say that. Silence is a consent, and they kept their silence. And I see my friends on the panel here not talking about the murder and the killing happening, rather than talking about President Erdogan. Come on. You can't really let your prejudices cloud your judgment on these issues. We're talking about real events here.
Right. If you could respond to what Hakan Cemal's just told us briefly, and then I also want you to address the question was, ultimately, was this a victory for Turkish democracy?
First of all, let's start by saying that this was really a tragic event, senseless loss of life,
right.
And we have to make sure that we have institutional measures to prevent them ever from happening again. So Turkey has to say never again. Let's begin there. And let's also underline that no matter what Erdogan's mistakes were, this cannot legitimize or prompt a coup. So a coup is never an answer. Yeah. So the worst elected government is better than the best self-appointed military government. Let's start there. But then we also have to say that even a coup, a bloody coup, a brutal coup attempt cannot justify also the voiding of rule of law. It cannot justify an authoritarian response. It does justify
I've got to
a strong
intervene. I've got to say something here. These people are not being shot on the streets. They're being detained by the police.
One moment, Hakan. Let Aykan finish it. Go ahead.
I think my colleague will also agree with me. The issue is this. If we have rule of law and due process, we'll make sure that all involved will get justice. Because we failed to do it in the Ergenekon and Balyoz cases.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to end it there. We've run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. For extensive coverage on Turkey's failed coup, visit our website. That's at cctv-america.com. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.